Muy buenas tardes, profesor Faiferri.
Buon dia, buonasera, good
Buonasera.
evening. Good evening for us e good morning for you, I suppose. Immagino, voi siete all'ora di pranzo.
Sí, es la hora de la comida aquí. Muy bien, antes que nada, agradecerle mucho, profesor Faiferri, por haber aceptado la posibilidad de, bueno, nuestra invitación más bien, de impartir esta plática dentro de lo que es el Diplomado en Vivienda Colectiva, Vicoco, aquí en la escuela ESARQ. Voy a leer este currículum en español. Usted, el profesor, puede dar la conferencia, si prefiere, en inglés, para que pues, la gente la pueda entender, o en italiano, como usted prefiera. Y nada, entonces, para no detenernos más, leo este currículum. El doctor arquitecto Massimo Faiferri es licenciado en arquitectura por el Instituto Universitario de Arquitectura de Venecia, el IUAV, donde obtuvo el doctorado en composición arquitectónica en 2005. Ha sido profesor en la Facultad de Arquitectura de Ferrara y en el mismo IUAV, así como en la Facultad de Arquitectura de Alghero. Es profesor de la Escuela de Doctorado en Arquitectura y Medio Ambiente y del Seminario Internacional de Planificación Villard desde el 2005. Es miembro de su comité científico. Es investigador en composición arquitectónica urbana y docente del Máster Internacional de segundo nivel en vivienda sostenible y asequible, en cooperación entre el DADU y la Universidad de Sassari, la Facultad de Arquitectura de la Universidad Técnica de Lisboa y la Universidad Presbiteriana Mackenzie de Sao Paulo. En 2018 tuvo el título de científico nacional como profesor titular en el sector de la competición 08D1 de diseño arquitectónico. Durante su actividad docente e investigadora ha podido construir una red de relaciones con grupos de trabajo internacionales, realizando actividades docentes en seminarios de diseño y másteres internacionales, como el Diploma de Posgrado en Diseño, Imagen y Arquitectura de l'Elisava, en Barcelona, el Máster Grado en Cooperación Internacional en Arquitectura Sostenible de Emergencia en la ESARQ, la UIC, siempre de Barcelona, y el Máster en Arquitectura y Medio Ambiente en la Universidad de Salerno. Es director y docente del Máster Internacional de Segundo Nivel, Vivienda Sostenible y Asequible en cooperación con el DADU. Fue miembro del Comité Científico del Festival de la Arquitectura FESTARC 7 y 8, organizado por la región de Cerdeña entre el 2007 y el 2008. Asesor del Museo Maxi en el Premio Internacional de Arquitectura IAP, Programa Jóvenes Arquitectos, entre el 2012 y el 2017. Asesor de la quinta edición y de la sexta edición de la Medalla de Oro de la Arquitectura Italiana. Es miembro del comité de la dirección de la primera edición del Festival de Cagliari Landscape de 2017 y miembro del comité científico del Laboratorio Internacional de Arquitectura del Paisaje siempre del mismo año. Su intensa actividad editorial, con la cual digamos que cuenta más de 100 publicaciones científicas reconocidas, le lleva a profundizar en algunas cuestiones a través del análisis del trabajo realizado por importantes referentes del mundo de la arquitectura. Entre ellos Alberto Campo Baeza, Arata Isozaki, Álvaro Sisa, Gonzalo Birne, Boris Podrecka, Stephen Hall, Glenn Marcut, La Catón Basal, Bielaretz, Odile Deck y John Noero. A través de monografías, ensayos y artículos publicados en diversas revistas internacionales como Area, Casabella, Domus, Architecture, Interior, Monograph, la industria de la construcción, exposición, paisaje y parámetro. Realiza actividades de investigación dentro del DADU con el laboratorio de Eco Urban Lab, que fundó favoreciendo un enfoque interdisciplinario desarrollado a través de una densa red de colaboraciones con prestigiosas instituciones nacionales e internacionales. Paralelamente a las actividades didácticas, desarrolla una actividad investigadora en el campo del diseño, participando con éxito en concursos de diseño nacionales e internacionales y ganando en diferentes ocasiones. Sus campos de investigación se han centrado en los últimos años en relación entre la residencia y la ciudad, investigando a través de la organización de jornadas, talleres, exposiciones, seminarios y experiencias de proyecto, el potencial latente de las nuevas formas de vivienda para la construcción de un urbanismo contemporáneo. Sobre estos temas, desde 2016, ha concebido y dirigido 4 ediciones de la Escuela de Verano ILS Innovative Learning Spaces. Por lo tanto, profesor, maestro, muchísimas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros y le dejo la palabra.
Thank you very much. I'm very sorry because I don't, as you know, I don't speak Spanish. So I try to illustrate my lesson in my very bad English, and I hope that you can understand it. You agree if I speak in English? It's okay for you?
¿Prefieren en inglés o en italiano?
En inglés está bien.
Inglés,
Okay,
vamos.
I try in English. First of all, I have to say that I'm sorry because my English is not very good, but I hope that you can understand it. Okay, I prepare some notes, so I follow to be more precise what I want to say, and I try to share my screen. I try. Okay. Can you see? Potrete vedere?
Sí, yes.
I start with the presentation. Can you see my presentation or you still see my screen?
No, vediamo soltanto vediamo il PowerPoint, però non lo vediamo in modalità presentazione.
Ok, adesso allora dobbiamo trovare la maniera di farlo vedere in modalità presentazione.
C'è il bottone che dice presentazione.
Io sono già andato, il problema è che non lo trasmette. Adesso cosa vedete?
Le diapositive.
Ok, dovrei provare a invertire.
Potrebbe essere. No? Sì, adesso si vedono bene.
Adesso si vede la mia diapositiva
Esattamente.
pulita,
Esattamente.
quella bianca,
Sì.
senza la visualizzazione note, quindi. Ok?
Esattamente. Perfetto.
Allora, se per voi va bene, if you are ready, we can start. First
Sì.
of all, I want to thank you for invitation, and it's a pleasure and honor to be here with you. And I hope that we can meet in person in the future. I don't know if it will be possible. Anyway, in this lesson, I will try to tell you about some research activities that we have carried out with our research laboratory, as you say, Eco-Urban Lab, first in our school in Alghero, and recently in Cagliari, here in Sardinia, where I teach since 1 year. I will start by presenting some of the initiatives, exhibitions, conferences, and publications that we have carried out over time on the topic of housing, and continuing through the account of the work of a number of architects who focused on the theme of the topic of reuse and transformation as an opportunity in the development of the housing project. And to do this, I want to start with a text written by an Italian architect, and I hope you know him, who has always considered the topic of the housing a key theme for the city project. His name is Giancarlo De Carlo. De Carlo, in this text, talked about his first period as a young architect. When he says, I was trained at a time when housing was a key problem of architecture. Obviously, there was a reason for this. The war was just finished. There was a great need of housing, and the housing problem had become a very important issue, almost sacred, he says, issues. But the problem of housing was not only a way for architects to be present on the construction scene, but also to give them the opportunity to identify themselves in a role. Designing the house, the architects had the opportunity to play an important role. They rebuilt the city, so they rebuilt the world. The ideological charge has evidently failed in the recent years, at least in our country, in Italy. Moreover, the question we should ask ourselves is, why do we say we need homes when we have built an average of 300,000 homes built in the last 10 years? This is the question. This ideological charge we can also say that why, if most of which is still unsold, as we can see in this picture. And traveling in our city, we continue to see signs with the word sale. We say vendesi everywhere. Obviously, the economic crisis and the pandemic question has played a fundamental role in this process. But there are probably other issues that exist even before, that still today influence the demand of housing in Italy, and not only in Italy. We are talking about some well-known phenomena which relate to problems and needs, to which the free real estate market cannot give answer. And at the end, we have even more people who are too rich for a public housing and too poor to afford the purchase of house in the open market. I don't want to talk too much about this analysis of this kind of dynamics, which are very well explained maybe during your professor during the course. But I just wanted to remind you that it means that the topic of housing is still a great opportunity, a relevant topic, but also an emergency issue for the contemporary project, even in Europe, not only in your country. For that reason, some years ago, with our research group, in the presentation that is called Urban Lab, we started thinking around this problem. One of the first initiatives was the organization of a conference in 2009, where we invited various scholars, professors from all over the world to think about the relationship between the topic of housing and the topic of emergency. The 2009 is also the year in which in Italy we had a terrible earthquake in the city of L'Aquila. So in the Congress, the word emergency was used according to 2 points of view. The first linked to the social problem of housing that I mentioned before, and the second was linked to the problem of natural disaster, such as earthquakes. Another initiative we organized in our school 1 year after the conference is related to a publication that I did in the international magazine Area. It's a monographic publication on the work of a famous Australian architect who has dedicated his entire work to the project of dwelling, of housing. The name is Glenn Marco. I hope that you know him. The presentation of this work has become an opportunity for us to organize a new conference at our school, starting from the particular attention to the issues of sustainability in the work of Glenn Marco. We invite some scholars to reflect around the sustainable strategies for the design of the contemporary city. Together with the conference, we also organize an exhibition that you can see in these pictures on his drawings with the title Context and Landscape, that I suggest you to study because they are all handmade drawings by Marco. As you can see in this slide, amazing, incredible drawings if we compare them with the digital drawings that we normally do. Also for this reason, Glenn Marco represents a way to think and practice architecture that is quite unusual in this day and age. Although he is a world-famous architect and has received numerous prizes and recognitions over the world, like as you know, the Pritzker Prize, Marco continues to work practically on his own and to design only in the part of the world where he lives in Australia. After receiving the Pritzker Prize, in spite of their greater popularity and more diffused interest in his work, his habits and personal inclination as an architect have not changed. He remained true a coherent research path defined in many years of work. This attitude has enabled him to design about 500 houses and to build very few public buildings, and has kept him far from the international limelight for a long time. The environment is one of the most important topics in his work. The building orientation and his research into a passive systems of environmental control represent a key point in his design process. Still today, none of his houses have air conditioning inside. And he always used local and recycled materials to build them. For more than 40 years, Marcus has conceived architecture as an idea of a space to be integrated with an environment, in the conviction that, as you can see, this is what we should all be doing and what we should have always done. The extreme attention given to climatic differences found in the various places in which he has built his houses, has in fact characterized his research into the various opening systems used, able to control shade, cooling, and ventilation. But this attention to sort of eco-sustainability of the project is not the only aspect which makes Marcus' architecture so current. We can talk about a process that gives us the chance to compare the changing needs of our current lives and at the same time, the possible variation of a more general idea of living. A process where houses built for oneself can become a privileged laboratory for verifying, free from external limitation, your idea of habitable space. For example, in the residence of Le Corbusier, and in particular in his Capanon, that you know quite well, for instance, everyone can easily grasp the idea and creative tension that has characterized the majority of his housing projects. Similarly, in the old photographs portraying Alvar Aalto in this holiday home in Murazzalo, we can find a sense of feeling of cozy domesticity, the same we can find in many of his projects. Similarly, we can also see in the house that where Marcus built and designed for himself with his wife, we have the same attention and the same way to think and do architecture. And just 1 second that I want to find the right notes about this building. And we can also have the same attention with light, with landscape, and cozy domesticity that we can find in the pictures that we see of Le Corbusier. And I believe that the house in which Marcus currently lives and works, despite is not considered one of the most important works by critics, confirm an idea of simple and at the same time complex domesticity. Simple because regular in form and geometry, almost always modular, characterized by a clear and linear distribution. Complex when the light and the landscape, as I told you, articulate, modify, and enrich the space in many different ways. I think that this idea of complex simplicity is one of the possible keys of interpretation to Marco's work, and in some ways can represent his stylistic code. We are talking about a designer who was always privileged needs, searching a synthesis between climate and topography, materials and technology, financial resources and client requests. A concept of living, or rather a concept of architecture, far from some contemporary architecture, where the imaging, rather than technology or innovative material, seems to become the most important issues, against the potential of the architecture and the surrounding environment that you use in this building. The house represent for Marco the place of life par excellence, in equilibrium between light and shade, between space and life, with its statical and sensorial pleasures and its needs. After this publication and initiative that I showed you, we have continued to deal with the relationship between housing and the topic of the emergency, with other publications like this one on the issues of the emergency linked to natural disasters, like the earthquakes in Italy that I already told you. And but also with workshops and projects that have been the subject of some exhibition like this. And a few years after the conference I told you about, we have collected the contribution of the scholars, professors, architects who had attended the 2009 conference. And we have also asked to other architects and professors around the world to send us some text and projects on the relationship between housing and emergency. And we have collected all these contributions in a publication of about 400 pages, a little brick full of examples. The book is divided in two parts, dedicated to the social emergency and the natural disaster emergency. This was an opportunity to start again with a reflection on the work of Glenn Marco. Also to investigate some other topics, such as the topic of transformation. Transformability and variation is a constant in Marco's work. His buildings are never designed as unique, immutable works. For example, the simple geometric mesh that he used in these houses is the grid. So the simple geometry become an instrument for architectural changeable through time and adaptable for future needs. It is also interesting to note how Marco modified his work in progress, or how after a few years, he changed some of his work in order to suit the new and different needs of his client. For example, this house, the Frederick White House project, was originally planned with one floor, with a simple geometry, but during the design, the planning, the client asked him for a more space, which could not be accommodated just in one floor. So Marco decided to create another floor. His revision gave to the house a new dynamic quality, and offered a view of the art of the house with a new spatial complexity. The same house that you can see in these drawings was restored several years later in order to annex more rooms, to relocate the veranda and turn an old garage into transform an old garage into a study, an office, above which another level was created. Despite this change, today's layout maintained, in my opinion, confirms the general characteristic of the house, as you can see in two different plans that I show you. In this publication, you can also find text and project of some famous architects like Stephen Hall or Shigeru Ban. As you know, for example, Shigeru Ban is famous for his building with paper tubes structure, no? And in this text, he talked about his project for a temporary concert hall in L'Aquila, made with this structural system. But in the book, you will find also many other paper tubes projects designed for the emergency situation like this. And Stephen Hall, in his text, talk about a little project designed by him after the disaster in Haiti in 2012, I think. The Dance Park Village, this is the name of the project, was designed to accommodate some of the 600,000 people without a house that moved from the countryside to the city after the disaster. Dance Park Villages is characterized by a system of courtyard housing that can be built with recycled concrete and high-string steel, which can resist hurricanes and earthquakes of level 9, so very strong houses. These houses can be built with the local labor, and the inhabitants would paint the exterior and interiors with the building with the custom color. They can choose different colors to characterize the building. In the book, you can find a very interesting text by Anne Lacaton and Jean-Philippe Fassal, which goes into more detail about the relationship between space and structure. I invite you to read the text Structural Freedom, a Precondition for the Miracle, this is the title, to better understand the importance of the adventure of superimposition. They use this word to better explain this aspect. How can the new be inserted into the existing one, they say, and what role the structure can play in this process? This text offers an interesting point of view on these questions. Among the many scholars who have written for the book, I want also to point out to you John Oero. He is an important South African architect who talks about the particular social situation of his country and illustrates some interesting housing projects, as you can see in this slide. And always connected to the topic of the housing project, in the 2014, yes, in our school, we started with an international master course with the title Sustainable and Affordable Housing. In cooperation with two important international universities, the Universidade Técnica de Lisbona and the Mackenzie University of São Paulo in Brazil. In this master, we had the honor and pleasure of having many of the professors that had already collaborated in the publication that I show you just now. Maybe it's not necessary to say it again, Lacaton Vassal, John Oero, Federico Sogliano, Nieto Sobejano, João Nunes, many others. within the course program, we have also organized a series of events, like some exhibition. This is about the work of Lacatone Vassal. This is about, I hope that you know the work of Gonzalo Birne, a Portuguese architect, very, very good architect. This is about the housing project of Italian office 5+1 architects. And this is about the interesting experience of the municipality of Barcelona in Spain. We organized also a debate in presence of Sorolla, there was the director of the housing policy department of the municipality of Barcelona. And again, the exhibition of the work of John Oero that I already present you, with some housing project with the important social implication. A few years later, this initiative became a series of publications. Sustainable and Affordable Housing is an international book series published by the international editor Listlab, founded with the aim to conveying the studies, the research, the cultural initiative developed into our master degree that I present you. The first book, as I told you, was dedicated to some interesting housing project of 5+1 architects. This was an architectural firm that has now split in two practices. They divided. One is Alfonso Femia and the other one is Gianluca Peluffo. But in this work, you can discover some interesting topics, such as, for example, the relationship between inner and outer space, between intimate space and collective space, which is one of the most interesting research of this architectural firm. But also the relationship between form and matter, how matter is able to generate forms and how this can be consistent with this process. The second one is about the Barcelona experience. In order to meet modern residential needs, the Patronat, the Municipal de l'Habitatge de Barcelona, main administration of the Catalan City Housing Cluster, in the last 10 years has launched a process of the public offers diversification by building some housing models specific for the most vulnerable categories of society. And the book introduced the most significant collective residential projects built by the Patronat in the last years. These projects are one of the most interesting, in my opinion, and innovative European experiences in meeting community needs. The third book is about the fantastic project of John Oero, the South African architect. It's the project for the site, Red Location site. This is a project for the renovation and the creation of an heritage in a Red Location that is a district of New Brighton Township in Port Elizabeth in South Africa. John Oero and his office has worked to this ambitious project of transformation in the last 15 years, with the objective of building a new center in this part of the city, devastated by the urban planning during the apartheid. For those of you who are interested in studying the work of this incredible architect, I would like to point you to a recent publication that I, with my colleague Samantha Bartocci, have completed on the work of John Oero. This is the book where you can find his project on the topic of housing, which obviously can only be related to the social issues that characterize his country, which also addresses through the topic of safe buildings, as in this project that you can see in this picture. If you want, you can find this book in the international bookshop. And going back to the sustainable and affordable series that I show you, the last book published is one dedicated to the work of Lacaton and Vassal that I think that you know, because they recently won the Pritzker Architectural Prize. They became quite famous. And this is the book that starts with this title, Reinvent, that is concentrate, and we develop the topic of reuse and transformation in this work. And to do in this topic, I want to use some keywords, some key points. And we want to start with this topic, life quality for everyone. The first aspect I want to like to focus on is an approach that we can define ethics in the architecture of Lacaton and Vassal. This is an approach that goes beyond to simply respond to the needs and expectations of the people who will go and live those architectures. As a matter of fact, they want to consider the principle as an opportunity to be extended to as many people as possible for them. This is possible thanks to a project that pays great attention to construction cost, which use simple and economical, sustainable technologies and materials. A project in which the constructive deals does not dominate the reflection on the project. A project where the construction details try, above all, to simplify and clarify the structure of the project. According to the principle, I believe that some of the works are very close to the work of Guillaume Marcot that I showed you before. And to his architecture, they pay great attention to the climatic condition of this country. For example, you know, for Australia, for the Marcot, but also flexible and adaptable over time, as I explained you before for the housing of Guillaume Marcot. An architecture where the user remain at the center of the project effort and objectives. Another topic is less is more. In this sense, a work is a model to be observed with great attention, especially in this period of an economic crisis that we are living. The philosophy behind the work is the maximum possible, especially in terms of space, with the least expensive. A sort of less is more, to quote Ms. van der Rohe, to focus principally on the economic of buildings. To achieve this goal, they use an industrial, as you can see, and agricultural landscape construction techniques, very elementary, but with great potential, even figurative. The first manifesto, I think that we can wish to call it so, is the Casa La Tapie in Floriac, built in 1993 in Bordeaux. The most characteristic of this building is the double skin that you can see here. And the most external is this translucent and ventilated in metal and polycarbonate, as you can see in this picture, which contain another inside that is a sort of opaque volume that you can see below. This means to have a new extra space without any complex technology. As for the volume becomes a new space from interior to exterior of the house, using a simple industrial element capable of creating spaces with a strong personality. They built a building of 185 square meters with a very, very low budget. Low cost, high quality. The evolution of this research continues in the project of Mulhouse, where Jean Nouvel, that was in charge for the master plan of the area, invited some architectural offices to design some social housing buildings. Lacatone Vassal designed a building with an industrial structure in zinc coated with polycarbonate again. A sort of greenhouse with a classic lowered arch on the top. This construction technique allows large windows and gives the possibility of having an inside space as unique as possible. There are very few dividing elements. The houses of Lacatone Vassal are much larger with a lower construction cost compared to the other built close to them. The message of this building is that the true luxury is the amount of space available for the house. So the objective behind each project for them is to achieve to the maximum possible space with their available budget, the budget that they have. Potential space. One of the most famous buildings of Lacatone Vassal that you will find in the book is the transformation of the Palais de Tokyo in Paris, a very interesting project. And I would like to point out for another fundamental aspect in the way of conceiving the project. Built for the 1937 Expo, it was never completed until 1999. The year in which it was decided to transform it into a center for contemporary art. The basic idea is to bring natural light back into the space. Lacatone Vassal decided to design in a minimum way. They only create new distribution connection and try to solve some structural problems. The question was how to reactivate the original qualities of the building. The Palais de Tokyo was imagined as a potential space where it's possible to express contemporary art in the free way, a potential space as a free field for the artist, for example, available from time to time to be transformed and completed through the use and appropriation of the people who use it. This is a principle that will also characterize many of the other projects. The topic recovery versus demolition. This is very important, they work. One of the topics that made the work famous all over the world was the confrontation with the obsolete building heritage of the public housing that we found in many suburbs of European cities. Obviously, even the outskirts of Paris is full of these cases. One of these is the Tower Tour Bois-le-Pré that you can see in this picture, that in 2005 was object of an architectural competition. The goal was to renovate the tower instead of demolition and reconstruction as the competition asked. Their project was being realized in 2 years with a budget of 40% lower than the demolition and reconstruction. The project proposed a new envelope that wraps the old building, and this operation gives a new images to outside of the building, increase the surface, and give a better spatial and functional quality of the apartments. Instead of the previous small windows, large transparent openings are offered from the project, changing the images of the tower, improving the quality and comfort of the interior spaces. The crucial aspect of the project was the relationship with the people that live there. They could stay in their homes for almost the entire duration of the work. They move out of the house only for a limited number of days. For Lacaton and Vassal, the project has only one real goal: to offer to the inhabitants the opportunity to improve their living condition. The transformation of the tower to Bourg-le-Pret, as well as many other projects that you can see in the book, are a series of examples that show us how it's possible to give dignity to a modest building with a few but significant intervention of a transformation of the existing that can give to the people that live there a new quality space. I think that this picture can better explain what I say in my bad English. And also with Lacaton and Vassal, like John Oero, my research went on with two interesting publications in the famous international magazine that I hope that you know, that is Domus. The first article of 2021, entitled Aesthetics of Need, try to explain how Lacaton and Vassal work is always aimed at responding to the needs and the expectation of the people who live there. The second article in 2022 is instead a small monography with the title is Complex Simplicity. In this number of Domus, you can see some of the most recent projects, like this one in France, Saint-Nazaire, or another one, very recent one in Ginevra, a fantastic project. Well, you can also explore the topic of reuse and transformation as an opportunity for the development of housing design. And just to go to the end of my presentation, the concept of transformation as the engine of the project, I think that in this sense, I believe that the work of Lacaton and Vassal is very close to the concept of transformation by Carlos Martí Ariz. Well, the transformation is understood as an intellectual operation where the contemporary architecture can and must try to recompose its relationship with tradition. A transformation where the object is not just a building, is not just something material, where the most important issue are the relationship, the grammatical rules of the project process. We are talking about a new reinterpretation of a concrete place, a place that wants to be improved through its transformation. A transformation that is a combination of tradition and innovation. We are talking about a process that always starts from the existent and that is a subject to variation, developments, and transgressions. And from this manipulation, from working with forms, a new, different form arises. Namely, says Carlos Martí Ariz, the project. The title of the book, Reinvent, in this sense, try to tell us something about this process, where the topic of reuse or reinvention becomes the principle that guides the project, the fulcrum around which all these decisions of the project rotate. The goal is to find the right way for insert in the project the new intention in the existing system, searching for the right balance between what has been and what will be. We believe that well-being, dreams, the expectations of contemporary society can be achieved through this principle, searching for a project that will able to return an adequate space to the future of our cities. I believe that the work of Lacaton and Massal must be observed and studied starting from these reasons. I start my lessons with the Carlo text, and I try to finish my lecture with another old text, but that I consider still relevant today. As you know, housing was the topic of the second edition of the exhibition of the Deutsche Werkbund. The exhibition was intended to showcase new housing solutions for the citizens of modern cities. From theoretical ideas to practical projects, the goal was to present town planning and architectural solutions for the future of our society. This famous letter of Ms. van der Rohe to Dr. Riesel, editor of the Werkbund journal Die Form, present open questions to which we have not yet given answers. I want to invite you to read this letter again, because I think we still have a lot to think about it. I finish. Thank you.
Grazie, Professor Faiferri. Thank you so much, Professor Faiferri, for your lecture. So I have just a short question. No?
I ask you to my presentation, if you agree.
¿Me están escuchando? Sí. ¿Mi sente, professore?
Sì, tu mi senti?
Sì, perfetto.
Ok, volevo solo uscire dalla mia presentazione e andare su Zoom, se per voi, if you want,
Perfetto.
if you agree.
Sì, it's okay. So I have just a short question.
Okay.
The emergency, the social, economic, of the environment emergency, I think is one of these days, no? So for you, collective housing, how can improve or how can help solving these dynamics?
Okay. I try in my presentation, using obviously my experience that I present, to show you some examples, to try to understand that even if we are in a very difficult situation all over the world, we have the war in Europe, we have we just went out from the pandemic issues, and before there was also a critical economical situation. But at the same time, when I see the work of Glenn Markle or the work of Lacaton and Massal, just to say again, two names that I showed you, I think that even if we have so difficult, with very simple approaches, it's possible to contribute even if we are still in this kind of problems. For example, maybe my presentation was not so clear and maybe too long, and I hope in the future to concentrate in one of these architects. But for example, in Glenn Markle, you have to know that he used only material of the places. And some of these houses, it's impossible to find material there. So they have to produce in a city, and then bring them to the site. So you have to choose something very simple, economical, but if you see the images that I show you, you can find an incredible architecture. The same we can say for Lacatone Vassal. They demonstrate that it's not necessary to demolish everything and to rebuild, but maybe you can also spend less money if you adapt, transform, and reuse what we have with very simple material. Again, with steel, offering space, quality, light, open the windows, and that's it. So I don't know if I give you the right answer, but in my opinion, those are two examples that can demonstrate that even if we are in a very difficult situation, you can build using this kind of topic for the architecture and give to the people a very incredible buildings.
Okay, thank you very much. Students, have you any question? ¿Tienen preguntas? Se la pueden hacer en español. ¿No?
Sì, poi tu me la traduci però.
Sí, yo la traduzco.
Grazie.
¿No?
Yo tengo una consulta.
Vamos, Juan Carlos.
En estos proyectos de Lacatón y Basal, en donde han intervenido en la vivienda colectiva, para usted, ¿cuán importante es o no es que la imagen original de la edificación prácticamente no se haya conservado? Más que nada se ha aprovechado la estructura interna para esta adaptación, transformación. Pero en cuanto a la imagen original, para usted, ¿cuán importante es o es una postura que hay que tomar? No sé cómo usted lo interpreta.
¿Traduco?
Devi solo tradurre la parte finale. Cos'è una postura da tomare?
Sí, praticamente Juan Carlos chiede
Sì.
che in questi progetti di Lacatón Vassal, dove alla fine si riutilizza, no, la struttura, l'edificio, quello che è diciamo, l'apparenza dell'edificio, la plastica dell'edificio, in una certa maniera, quando l'edificio diciamo, viene cambiato, cambia, non ha la stessa facciata, non ha lo stesso tipo di relazione. No? Quindi Juan Carlos chiede qual è la sua visione, no, di questo tipo di cambio, no? Se è un qualcosa che diciamo, funziona o no, o se si dovrebbe preservare l'immagine diciamo, della preesistenza o no.
Allora, I try to say in English again. I met Lacatone Vassal since many years, and every time that we discuss about architecture, they don't want speak about the images of the building. They always start talking about needs. They always talk about expectation of the people that lives inside, and they talk about quality of space. So when they started to design a transformation of the building, they think about the images just at the end. So if the building, like, for example, the museum that I show you in Paris, the Palais de Tokyo, obviously the original images of the building is very important because it's an old building with some characteristic, and also the function can be okay, you can have the right function if they maintain the building, the existing building. But for the housing, for example, they start from a building that is not good for the people that stay inside. So they need to transform it. And if is necessary to change the images of the building to give more quality for the people that live inside, they change. Because for them, the most important thing is the people that stay inside, not the images of the building. And I don't know if I give you the right answer, but this is most important. And obviously you have to I think that you see the pictures, the building, when they start, the old housing is not a very interesting building. It's just a building of 1970, 1960 with bad images and also an old structure. So I don't know if I give you a right answer. And I don't know if my English is enough to explain in the right way.
It was very
It's
clear.
clear. Thank you.
Another question? No? Professore, è stato chiarissimo di fatto, professore, perché ho chiesto qua anche in sala e non ci sono domande. La verità sono degli esempi incredibili, quelli che ci ha portato all'attenzione. L'opera di Lacaton Vassale è un'opera molto contemporanea, no, al giorno d'oggi, perché ci parla di come dobbiamo in una certa maniera muoverci, no, nella contemporaneità dell'emergenza, no, dove nell'emergenza dobbiamo reaprovechar, no, riusare questi scheletri, no, queste costruzioni, queste energie che ci sono nella città.
Posso aggiungere solo una cosa? Can I say something? I talk also about another architect that I know that is not famous like Glenn Marcotte and Lacaton Vassal, because both of them are Pritzker prizes. But I suggest you to see the work of John Oero, that is this South African architect, because in terms of emergency and also for social situation, it's a good example for you to see. And quindi spero che voi possiate vederlo, perché è un architetto molto interessante. So very interesting for this topic.
Revisaremos la obra de John Oero, la verdad. Revisaremos esta obra y voy a conseguir también los libros. Esos libros del...
Sí, te li mando.
Muchísimas gracias, profesor, por su tiempo, por haber colaborado con nosotros. La verdad ha sido un placer tenerlo aquí con nosotros y espero que pueda colaborar en el próximo libro del Laboratorio Bicocco con el texto de esta tan incredibile conferenza.
È stato un piacere anche per me. E mi scuso ancora, I'm really sorry for my bad English, and I hope that you can also understand what I want to say in my lecture. So, grazie a voi e spero di rincontrarvi presto, anche di persona, magari da voi in Messico. Mi piacerebbe molto.
Está invitado a venir.
Grazie.
Encontraremos la forma para que venga. Un abrazo, profesor. Hasta luego.
Un abbraccio a tutti voi. Arrivederci e grazie.
Hasta luego. Bye.